Ben Gurion University of the Negev is the largest one that produces, quote to quote, something between 2,000 engineers a year.
Especially the desert plus humidity is a recipe for unhappiness.
Yeah, because we use so much energy to cool our buildings, and the buildings take out so much energy to the air. So it's not only the humidity or not only the sun intensity, it's also what we as human beings are causing to our surroundings and our ecosystem. The reason they're facing such a great challenge is because the Sahara is expanding to the central part of the continent.
And how fast is it expanding?
Expanding fast enough. So you see the immigration waves from Central Africa after every tragedy or a disaster like we faced. There is an opportunity to grow.
Welcome to another episode of IsraelTech, and we're filming here from Google for Startups in Tel Aviv. If you haven't been following IsraelTech, well, then now's the time. We're bringing you all of the interesting stories, personalities, and technologies coming from Israel in English in your feed, where you spend your time the most. No special players, we're the media, and we want to bring you along with it. If you want to join us in democratizing and decentralizing the media around Israeli technology, please like, subscribe, and make sure to follow and share this with your friends. Sivan, welcome to IsraelTech.
Toda. Nice to be here.
It's great to have you. So most people that I interview, they usually are local when I'm in Tel Aviv. Very few schlep from the south to the north. Why don't you tell us kind of like where you're coming from and why is it so great to have you?
Well, thanks for having me, first of all. And I'm Sivan Cohen Shachari. I came from Be'er Sheva, which is the largest city of the Israeli desert. It's called the Negev. And I'm coming in the name of DeserTech Climate Innovation Center, a very important mission that I took for myself in the last year, and previously from other missions around DeserTech.
So what is DeserTech? It's kind of weird. When people think DeserTech, they don't think about like other technology with other terrain. They don't think like mountain tech or beach tech or rainforest tech. Why is there such a thing as desert tech?
Well, there's few ways to look at it. First of all, when we established DeserTech, it was almost 5 years ago. It was under the wings of Merash Foundation Israel, which is a private philanthropic foundation based originally in Denver, Colorado, but it's been investing in Israel philanthropically in the last 20 or so years. And their focus is to see how the Negev, the Israeli desert, could prosper in various ways. 5.5 years ago or so, we went with another strategy to see what could the Negev benefit from its own assets. So we understood, while investigating what the Negev has to offer to the world, and see how could that become its growth engine, economic growth engine. Some people mentioned to us from various directions that there is a phrase they call DeserTech, and you can split the word into desert and tech, meaning that you will look for technologies that could be relevant to be implemented in desert areas or arid areas or areas that might suffer from desertification. We could elaborate on that soon. What does it mean to experience desertification? But we saw this as an opportunity for us in the foundation, and we decided to take that term and start building something out of it instead of just having a term and that's it. So we investigated more, and we understood what kind of technologies could be relevant to tackle desertification challenges in the areas of agriculture, renewable energy, water technologies, and also construction and materials technologies that didn't necessarily see themselves regarding or facing desertification challenges, but we saw them as someone who could, or technologies that could be tested and validated in the Negev, in the Israeli desert. And then once they prove that it works in such an arid area, we could help them scale to where they're most needed. Because Israel, in very fascinating way, as a startup nation, don't necessarily need specifically these technologies, because we have overcome some of the challenges that we face because of desertification. But think of Colorado River, for example, how it dries up during the years, or the areas in the deserts in Central America or South America, or even China or UAE, all of these regions. So if they want to help the people who live in these areas, the governments, they should use technology and innovation. This is where we came across the term and started building a life to it.
Is there any other kind of organization like you focusing on desert tech in any of these other places that have a lot of deserts?
Actually, we found out that I think it's called St. George in Utah, there is an innovation district that was founded not too long ago that took the term DeserTech and kind of absorbed it to them because they saw the need in Utah and also the assets that they have in the region. I think that the terminology of innovation district is very important to our discussion. In Be'er Sheva, where I come from, which is the largest city of the region, they decided to use a call for proposals that the Israeli government has issued around 6 years ago to see how they could build an innovation district in the city. What does it mean? It means that you have a local asset, like a university, a hospital, maybe army units that are positioned in the region, but also in Be'er Sheva, what we also have is a train station and a high-tech park. All of them together could create an innovation district, meaning that people meet each other, either startups, corporates, investors, and so on, and that could bring prosperity and economic growth to the specific city because the area is very tiny and close to each other. All of the assets are not too far away from each other. So Be'er Sheva won that tender and then started defining what kind of verticals the innovation center should be declared by. And they decided the cyber sector is very relevant in Be'er Sheva because of the faculty of engineering in Be'er Sheva and so on. Also health tech and medical.
Wait, when you say the faculty, you're talking about Ben Gurion University?
Yes, Ben Gurion University.
The main university in Be'er Sheva.
The main university and also some other small colleges, but Ben Gurion University of the Negev is the largest one that produces, quote to quote, something between 2,000 engineers a year. So it's a great human capital, but then what happens with it? I mean, where do they go to work the day after they graduate? What kind of companies are in the region who could be their home base now that they're graduated? Another sector was decided to be medical health, medical devices and digital health because of the hospital that is just around the corner of the university, Soroka Hospital, and they joined forces with each other. And also something very unique in the region, the fact that we are part of a very diverse ecosystem, sociologically, meaning we have Jewish community in the Negev, we have Bedouin community in the Negev, we have secular, we have ultra-Orthodox, means that the diversity of the society is very wide, meaning that the knowledge about their needs health-wise is very unique. So this hospital actually serves almost 1 million people, and that way helps the researchers and the doctors in the hospital to provide a very diverse methodology of healthcare. And then they decided they want to have DeserTech also, based on the research from Ben Gurion University and the R&D centers in the region, but it was less around industry and innovation, and it was more around academic knowledge, which is very important when you talk about DeserTech. But when we established the ecosystem, we decided to kind of break the silos between all of them, between academy, between industry, and between entrepreneurs, and bring them all together around one table and bring new innovation, first of all, to the region, and then to take it out to the world.
Amazing. So, I mean, we mentioned Ben Gurion University, and Ben Gurion, Israel's, let's say, founding father and first prime minister. He was very big on the Negev frontier, which is why the university is named after him. Why was he so interested in the Negev?
I think he saw the region with its potential. I mean, he decided...
But really, all of Israel's potential is like swamps, and it was right? Mark Twain wrote about it. There's nothing.
Yeah, true. I think what he saw, maybe I could give it metaphorically. When you stand next to his graveyard in Sde Boker, you see the view.
It's exhilarating, by the way.
And it's eye-opening, and it's breathtaking, and it's a landscape of inspiration. And I think in that way, and also many of the prophets of Israel came through the Negev in a way because there are less distractions. So you get sometimes even deeper with your thoughts, and maybe you get some more understanding of what the world could need if you have enough time and money to develop it, in a way. I think in a more condensed area, more urban place, you get more distracted by all of the things that surround you. While in the Negev, it's less like this. even though Ben Gurion moved to the Negev in 1960s, but yet it was a lot less populated than it is today. The Negev, even today, is only with around 9 to 10% of all the Israel population, which is not that big. So there's a lot of potential. And I hope we can follow his steps in a way, or at least follow his vision on how the Negev could look like years from now, but we want to do it quite quickly. So we need quick wins because we're in business eventually.
You're spoken like a true Israeli, huh?
Let me tell you about our partners, WadiDigital.com, the technology marketing agency. If you're a startup or a tech company that needs marketing help, bring in leads that actually convert into opportunities, then this is your real partner. They even help us and many other technology companies with advertising, SEO, social media, influencer marketing, and video editing, just like they do for us here at IsraelTech. So what are you waiting for? Take your marketing to the next level and reach out to Wadi Digital. And now back to the show.
I always found like what's interesting about the Negev, like my three favorite kind of sciences are marine science, especially deep ocean, space, and neuroscience. And the other what I think I really like that is that in a way they're all like a frontier, right? It's not fixed. It's so we know very little about all three of these. And I think in a sense that's like a smaller extent to the DeserTech, to like the desert. Like there's a lot here and we haven't figured it out, and it's so vast that it feels like it goes on forever, even in Israel when it doesn't because it's so small here. I think that's kind of what drives people to it. And you, by the way, you said something interesting about a lot of profits coming through there. There is something special about those. For anyone's ever slept in the desert at night, ideally not in the tent, under the stars, it is another experience that I think you get to know yourself better.
And also how small you might be in comparison to the globes surrounding you.
Right, yeah, and everything. And suddenly you notice you're on a ball that's rotating and revolving.
In Mitzpe Ramon, they have a walking path that they have created a while ago, the municipality, that is called the Stars Path. And they planted in the road some shining small stones. You get to go there by night, and it's not lightened at all. It only relies on the stars' light. So you walk, and you could pick your head up and see the stars above, and then you see down you, and you have some stones sparkling and so on. Everything is so clear in a way, which there's beauty in the city and big cities and so on. But the desert also offers you something like this. So I think it's very appealing in a way. But yet there are challenges to tackle while you live in a desert area or in an arid area or in an area which is urban but could face desertification or climate change in general. So living in Be'er Sheva, for example, now has become in a way more humid. I'm there in the last 16 years or so. Suddenly the city is more humid. That's mainly because they're building more high-rises buildings. I mean, high-rises to Be'er Sheva, not comparing to other cities maybe globally. And then what do you do with that humidity? Or when you walk between
especially the desert plus humidity is a recipe for unhappiness.
Yeah, and then you get all the dust sands and so on, dust storms and so on. But then also think of walking between the buildings in a very arid area in August or July. How hot could that be? But then you don't want people live outside of the city when it's too hot. So what do you do with these urban heat islands? But heat islands could also happen here in Tel Aviv. I mean, because we use so much energy to cool our buildings, and the buildings take out so much energy to the air. So it's not only the humidity or not only the sun intensity, it's also what we as human beings are causing to our surroundings and our ecosystem, the natural ecosystem. That's where technology innovation can come into, because when we founded DeserTech, we understood at the beginning that we look for technologies in the areas of water technologies and so on. But then we understood that we need to add another layer, and that would be the desert or desertification challenges. So it's extreme climate conditions, but it looks different when you talk about a very populated city in an arid area in comparing to a rural community in an arid area. We're talking about water scarcity. And think of water scarcity in rural communities in Nigeria, for example. But when you need more water in Southern Europe, for example, to water the grapes and the vineyards. So what do you do then when they have less and less rain falling or snow falling, can they provide the best quality of wine while water are scarce now? And in addition, when you look on situations like remote living, like we mentioned before, but also soil degradation. I mean, we want to produce enough food for our people. Can we do that when we have less and less fertile sand or soils because we overuse the sand and soil? So some of these issues are not just because we live in deserts, but also because we overuse our ecosystem. And now how can we provide enough food security globally? How can we provide enough drinking water globally? All of these issues are now things that we want to tackle with the Israeli technology.
So what unique technology we're talking about deforestation. First of all, why is that important? Because there's some oxymoron here, right? Isn't there? It's like a paradox. You're like, we're pro-desert, we love the desert, DeserTech, and we're talking about not deforestation, sorry, desertification. Yeah. Right? And turning the desert green, basically ending the desert. Isn't it? I feel like there's an oxymoron there.
Actually, it forces us to think much more strategically and much more taking into consideration what is natural resources and how do we not harm what we really have. When we talked before about that landscape over the Ben Gurion graveyard, if we put a bunch of solar panels over there, it harms nature. I mean, it doesn't give us the same landscape that we used to have. So we need to think very efficiently around how do we use, quote to quote, these resources, but not harm natural resources in addition.
Tell me about it. I have this is like a pet peeve of mine.
Yeah.
Is like my wife's a birder. She takes photographs of birds a lot, and I go with her. I enjoy it, but not as much as her. But I've learned to really love birds. And just learning how much windmills kill birds, especially, because of the Paris Accords, we put a bunch of windmills up in the Golan and near Tel Hai.
Yeah.
It destroys the landscape, just ugly. And then we're a major bird migration route in the world.
Yeah.
Connecting Africa with Asia and Europe. And we're killing thousands of birds for a joke, for beautiful God's creatures, for it's almost like a cult. Like, it's barely helping the environment. It destroyed the landscape, and we're killing hundreds of thousands of beautiful migrating birds in every direction.
There's a subsector of agri-tech and renewable energy that is now called agrivoltaic. It means that you can place solar panels over orchards or fields or even vineries or greenhouses in order to double use, quote to quote, the land for producing food and producing energy.
Magan Michael, it's near where I live in Pardes Chana. We go there a lot birding, almost every other Friday. And they have fish ponds. Mm-hmm. And I took a picture of it. I put it on Twitter a year ago, but where they have solar panels floating on the water to stop from the wood. The fish not eating as much, the water not evaporating as much.
Yeah.
Free space and producing energy right there on the spot. They're off the grid. Yeah. It's amazing.
And it's dual use. I mean, we can dual use the land either by floating panels or dual use over crops and so on. It is not yet used globally and not even in Israel enough due to many restrictions and understanding that you have to research to understand that it doesn't harm not the land, not the crops, but also not the general ecosystem, like you've mentioned, the birds. Because if the bugs and the bees could be in the region, and then you place solar panels above the crops, what happens to them? I mean, and when you talk about developing a new technology, it's not like gaming, that you have an app and then, you test the algorithm once or twice and then it works and you send it out to Google Play or any other app for downloading and the other apps. You need to test it and validate it good enough so the farmer would support placing more panels above his crops, but also regulatory-wise, if you produce more electricity, where does it go to? Do we have enough space in the national grid for that? Or do you put storage facilities next to the solar panel production so you could have an off-grid system or a microgrid system? All of these questions are not yet answered totally, but Israel, because we are a hot climate-wise, we can be the better site for that. And when we deep focus into Israel, the Negev is actually the best. I could call it a better site, but I'm more prefer to call it a sandbox.
Literally. I like that.
Yeah, literally, metaphorically, the Negev is a sandbox for these technologies. So we can offer farmers to test these kind of new technologies in their farm. They could tell us, listen, it hurt my crops. My yield is not good in quality like it was before. He's willing to take that risk as long as he sees the economic potential of it once it succeeds. So this is kind of the things we want to do. It's not only developing new technologies, it's actually using the area to be the testing area for technologies that could be used in Israel, and that's a good thing to do. So Israel would be the house of all new technologies relevant to Israel's needs and challenges. Think of an investor sitting in the UAE, seeing a pilot of a technology with great remarks and inputs from the farmer, its potential partner, the business partner, and he says, okay, it's validated, it's good enough, the ROI looks good, I want to invest in it, and I want to scale it in the UAE. That's like a short example of things that we want to do.
Amazing. So it sounds like we have to go after this Utah organization trying to copy your DeserTech. If you need help with SEO, so if anyone searches DeserTech, you guys come up. I'd be more than happy to help there. So one of the more interesting aspects of just the Negev, we were talking about it. We touched on it. I kind of want to go into it a little bit more with you, if you want. The turning the Negev green, right? Which is ironic. We love the Negev, so why do we want to turn it green? Like, what's like? You don't love someone so much, you want to fix them, right? Sure, we want them to improve, whatever, but not. You don't say something's fundamentally wrong with my spouse, and I love them so much.
Yeah.
Does that ever feel weird to you that you're like that? A lot of people that are passionate about improving the desert is trying to make it not be a desert. Like, it's as if like there's something wrong with being a desert in of itself.
It's a good question. I think you would see different strategies in different areas around the globe. Some areas that are more deserted than even how the Israeli desert looks like. Their approach is, let's make it green, which is, I cannot compete with that because sometimes it's even the strategy or the policy of government. When you want to make a severe or maybe a deep change, you can show them different aspects of it. We had a project at DeserTech 2.5 years ago with representatives from 10 African countries, from the mid part of the continent, some that Israel don't even have diplomatic relationship, even before the war. We're talking about March 2023, before the war. We approached these countries through the support and the collaboration that we had with the UN Convention to combat desertification. It's a UN special unit that is dealing with desertification, as it says. They understood that they have a potential of implementing Israeli technologies where they're most needed. When we approach these countries or representatives from them, we ask them to define the challenges themselves. We cannot know deeply how the challenge of soil degradation, for example, in our eyes, because they live it on a daily basis. They know what kind of crops grew before and succeed and what didn't. They can know what kind of challenges the soil is facing due to soil contamination and so on. So we did a process of defining the challenges with them, but then we invited them to come to Israel. And they did. 30 African representatives out of 10 countries came to Israel to see what Israel looks like when it's a desert. They came to the Israeli desert, visited the R&D centers, visited even companies sitting next to the seaside of Israel, but they're dealing with technologies that could support the livelihood of people around deserted areas. And our approach was to get them to know each other and to see who could be their relevant partner to implement their technology where it's most needed in Africa. So we have now projects running in Chad, in Nigeria, Mauritania, Niger, Mali, countries that I didn't even think.
All in Northern Africa, basically. Right?
Yeah. And the reason they're facing such a great challenge is because the Sahara is expanding to the central part of the continent. And
How fast is it expanding?
expanding fast enough. So you see the immigration waves from
Wow.
Central Africa because of that, because people cannot grow anymore their food, and they cannot water their fields, and they cannot provide enough drinking water. So they cannot stand and see everything is vanishing away and say, okay, I'll wait for something to happen. They have to move. And in addition, you see that all of these land areas are being covered by sand. They don't necessarily know how to overcome that new change in the region. So they move.
You couldn't take a bunch of shovels.
Not yet. But you know what they did try? Speaking of greening the area, they did try to plant trees. They planted around 500,000 trees, and it didn't work. Because even though it's a local tree, it doesn't just work when you just plant a tree and then you hope that the desert would be stable. Because sand is stronger. It's funny to say it, but sand is stronger than a tree. It moves with the wind, and then it covers another pile and another area and another area, and then they're left nothing. The tree is not strong enough to overcome that that sandstorm.
It's like a locust, right?
Yeah. and now when they implement the technologies, the Israelis are in more understanding of what does the challenge look like. Who could be their business partner over there? And most of the partners are not business partners. They are more from the NGO area of the country, sometimes even special units from the government that are dealing with desertification. And it's a stronger connection because it's much more stable and much more strategic than just having a partner in desert areas could go with the sand or go with the wind in a way. I mean, when they collaborate with the government, luckily for us, they're more stable.
Is Israel's desert receding?
No.
Is it expanding? Is it relatively stagnant?
It's quite stagnant.
I think I heard it was receding at one point.
It's quite stagnant because Israel did plant trees in the 50s as an independent country. It did see the potential of planting trees back then. Some forests now in Israel actually hold the soil strong enough so the desert would not expand to a bit more norther than the northern part of the Negev, the Israeli desert. And in that case, what we do see is the extreme climate conditions, but they're not relevant because of desertification. It's because the climate changes globally, and we see how it's more humid, how now we are in March 2025, and we had a fully rainy week 2 weeks ago, and this week was very hot, so climate change is all over us.
Yeah, well, it's always
Yeah.
been. We used to joke, I remember growing up in Philadelphia, every April it would snow, like
Wow.
a little bit, like in the beginning of April, right? And I remember in the office where it never snows in April. What's going on? And I was like, no, it snows every April because my mom says it's God's April Fool's joke. And then the same thing would happen in August in the summer. It would be like 100 degrees. I'm talking Fahrenheit.
Yeah.
For a full week, very hot. It was like 40 to 42 degrees or something like that for a full week. And they're like, it's never this hot. I'm like, we say this every summer. So I was a kid. I don't know. I feel like, this week.
I remember walking around in a rainy Purim
Yeah.
as a kid, and
Yeah.
now my kids went to Purim with...
Yeah, it was hot. It was a hot Purim. It was 80.
It was very
I can speak
hot.
Fahrenheit, but it was like 82 degrees. Is the one thing I can't do. I picked up liters, I picked up kilometers, I picked up centimeters, I picked up everything,
But not the temperature.
not Celsius. And I'll tell you why. Because it makes no sense. Okay, it's the one that makes more than Fahrenheit. Because Celsius is great if you're a scientist.
Yeah,
Because 0 is freezing, is 100 boiling.
true.
But so it's a great 0 to 100 scale
Yeah.
in science. But when I'm using temperature almost always for the weather, and maybe sometimes cooking, rarely. And so the 0 to 100 is like, it's the scale for the
I
weather.
think we talked about it before, that the cultural differences.
Right, we're
is,
at lunch.
Yeah, we see it very obvious also here. Yeah.
Yeah, it's fascinating. So when you put up, because Israel planted trees in the 50s, we're able to prevent the desert
From expanding.
expanding into those trees. Now, those trees, you're saying that soil has changed and evolved to serve those trees that were being planted there. Am I understanding correctly?
In a way, it was a very intense move of the Israeli government with the support of KKL People gave money and donated in the blue box.
It's one of my clients, by the way, Jewish
Really?
National Fund USA.
So they put money in these blue boxes and donated money to plant more trees. And evolution made it happen. So the trees were climated in a way, I would say, to that area, even though they're not the relevant trees nowadays. When you read research around it, these are not the trees of the region. They came from the mountains of Jerusalem, and they were adopted to the Negev. But it was a national task, so it's a different time that we talk about.
By Israeli standards, like people don't know, that's like an hour and 15-minute drive for an hour drive. They brought from the hills of Jerusalem all the way to the desert. And by any other world standard, I know.
Yeah.
By the way, that's one of the amazing things about Israel, just like what a joke of a size we are. And how I think we sent like 3 tectonic plates and, you're skiing in the Hermon. Now we have more skiing in the Hermon. And there's the Golan and the Galil and the desert and the mountains of the Shomron and the deserts of Judea, south of Jerusalem, and the coast and the Dead Sea. We have 4 seas in this little land. It's amazing.
When we cover the Negev, when we call the Israeli desert, it's actually from Sderot, which is familiar now due to the war, and the Dead Sea, which are the east and west borders of the Negev, and Kiryat Gat, which is around 30 minutes drive from Be'er Sheva to Eilat. But the microclimates you would have in this triangle is crazy. You have
more than anywhere else in the world, would you say? Like, why?
The Syrian-African break, how would you say it in English? Yeah. Of the tectonic boards and some other issues that made it like this. But it's a very unique desert. It's actually not the same. The desert in Be'er Sheva is not like the desert in Mitzpe Ramon and not like the desert in Eilat. The soil is different, the amount of rain falling is different. So that causes a diversity. And it allows startups test their technologies in various climates in a very small area, very condensed. So they prove that it works in Mitzpe Ramon, which is one of the highest small towns in Israel. When they prove it works there, they can take it to Arizona, for example, if the climate is quite similar, as far as I understand. It's not that they have to test it on one place and that's it, but they have a diversity. And what's else is very unique in the Israeli desert is the amount of human capital around it and the amount of research and know-how. Because when the Israeli government decided they want to settle the borders, many of the small communities there are based on agriculture. So the people who live there know best how it is to grow crops in semi-arid or arid climates. And they can support startups that don't necessarily understand agriculture, for example.
Have the technology for it and they help them implement it.
But,
and because we're so many different, let's say, micro desert climates, and in such a small place, that we can test so many different we can test technology in a lot of different desert climates.
True.
In one day, in one go.
Yeah. And this is what we do now and we focus on in the Innovation Center of DeserTech. It was founded a year ago by a tender of, when we won a tender of Israel Innovation Authority. And we understood that even though there's a very large ecosystem to support these startups, there were still not enough startups in the region. So we decided to go a few steps back, and instead of just working with existing technologies, we wanted to support the establishment of new startups based on the knowledge that we have in the Negev, based on the global needs that we're familiar with, like the example I gave you from the African countries. And we see ourselves as like a bridge between innovation and technologies and entrepreneurs and the global needs, like African needs or Colorado needs or anyone else. And like I said before, I want to see myself as the person or the organization that is breaking the silos. This is how we do it. We bring the needs, we bring the challenges, and we introduce them to entrepreneurs and to researchers, but we help them establish a startup out of it. I mean, to build a business model, to create something that is validated business-wise and not just research-wise, because we excel in that, but we want to be excellent in bringing that innovation to the next level. Are
you guys a for-profit or?
We are for-profit, but The business model is an impact model.
That was my next question. Yeah. What's your model?
It's an impact model. We are funded by the Israel Innovation Authority, but we know how to raise funds from other organizations, obviously. But the founding partners of the Innovation Center were Merash Foundation, that I've mentioned before, Negev Incubator, which is an Israel Innovation Authority incubator for startups that are a bit more mature.
What was it called?
In Negev.
In Negev, okay.
In Negev. Yeah. They're focused on climate tech and deep tech. So for any initiative that I'm coming across with, I know that whoever is relevant enough to be invested in, I can be the deal flow manager for In Negev, for example, or provider. Because they would be the investment arm of what we do, but it's not exclusive for them. I mean, any other investor that is looking for technologies that are mature enough for their pre-seed investment could approach us and say, I'm interested in what you're doing. We have the Gurion University involved because they have a lot of the research, and Israel Innovation Institute that is building ecosystems of innovation, and Group 19 that is focusing on tech employment in the Negev.
Why is it called 19?
Good question. When Chana Rado, the CEO and founder of Group 19, opened up her business, she decided she want to bring new employment opportunities in Mitzpe Ramon. She had her marketing agency over there, and she said, I want to be independent in my work. She approached the municipality and said, okay, I want to open up a network of accountants in Mitzpe Ramon. Can you tell me how many are there here? And they said, let's see in our lists. Okay, I think there are around 19. And to the interviews came maybe 5, but then the number 19 was kept. And it was like an anecdote, but a good opportunity, yeah.
It makes for a good story.
Yeah, so now they're more focusing on tech employment. So we're focusing on drones in the Negev and data analysis, because we saw there is a potential around the human capital in the region that don't necessarily meet large companies who want to open up a site or an offshore opportunity in the Negev for many reasons, but we could be their mediators or middlemans in a way, so we can support them in opening new sites instead of having all the burden on themselves. We could do it for them. But we shift the paradigm, like in the innovation side, we bring the challenges and then we bring the solutions. Also in the employment arm, we bring the needs of the great companies, and then we support that in bringing new people, talents who would be positioned in these positions.
Is the population of the Negev growing?
It is.
And as a percentage of the country, is it growing?
Not as quickly or as strategically, even though there are many efforts done in that term. I'm not so sure how is it going to look like post-war. We're talking about a year and a half after October 7th. Some of the communities are not back in their home communities. But I do hear around me many people who want to consider the Western Negev, at least, that area that was affected mostly by the war, that they want to see themselves blooming there, because there is, after every tragedy or a disaster like we faced, there is an opportunity to grow.
Correct.
And I think it's a great opportunity, but yet things should be more before people do that move and just move from Tel Aviv, for example, or any city around Tel Aviv to that area. I think there are many efforts and many initiatives around that to support people who want to see themselves bloom in the Negev, or in the Western Negev at least. And also, I think around COVID, we also saw some changes. I mean, people did want to see themselves living in a more quiet area, more open air around them, and not just very tight and condensed like in central Tel Aviv, for example. We still have a way to go around populating the Negev with more people.
Why is this so hard?
I think there aren't enough resources in the region.
What do you mean? Like just like opportunities, like business parnas opportunities, or people just don't want to be somewhere that's so hot? Like,
I think it's around business opportunities most. I mean, the government is doing a lot of efforts to support people from moving to move there, but yet it's not that it's not held very strategically. I mean, there are many initiatives that come and go. If we want to see people living in a very tight area, then they should be here. But moving to another area that you don't necessarily have a community around you there, or you don't know what could be, if you're moving only for one job that you got an offer for, what's going to be your next position the day after you quit that job for any reason, or you're at the junior level and you want to see yourself as a senior. How many opportunities you have in that sector in a very small area eventually. So I think these are like the main issues why people don't necessarily rush to the Negev. And I think the climate is less of a challenge for them.
If there's so many engineers graduating from Ben Gurion University, 2,000 a year, and a lot of people are also going to the army and living in the Negev for a few years, how are they not able to retain them past the army or are they? What's the retention look like to keep people in the Negev after the army service or after university?
Eventually, it's the amount and quality of positions in the region. I mean, if a large company, a corporate, would say, okay, I want to benefit from all of that human capital that the Negev has due to the fact that many people who go through that, either by university or the army service, I think they're going to have great success. But it takes time to decide that you open up a new branch or a new site in a new area that you're not necessarily familiar with, that you need to be more risky. But we do want to see people come not only because of business opportunity. I think it's also because of the extra flavor of, I could say Zionism, I could say idealism, I could say both ways.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, interesting. Do you think people are moving more towards a lot too? It's amazing what's going on there. It's exploding.
It's amazing. I think the people going to Eilat are very unique because eventually are very decentralized.
Yeah.
You have only Eilat. But the city is very attractive now. And
it's independent now. It's got everything you need. Didn't need that 15 years ago. I don't think it was like that.
It's even independent energy-wise. I don't know if you knew that.
I remember the mayor. I remember where I was reading this. This is like a decade ago, maybe longer. He was complaining in the Knesset that they have to pay water tax. They are independent water-wise, right?
Yeah.
And he was like, why are we involved like water taxes or something? He was like, we're on our own.
And now they're doing that in energy. I mean, they provide themselves 100% of the electricity
From where? That's
consumption
so cool.
on daytime.
From their daytime sun.
Yes.
And so they've energy 24 hours?
Yes, obviously. They're always connected to the national grid.
Right, just in case.
They want to be...
Or probably by law. They won't even let them probably...
Yeah, because it's a national emergency unit.
Right.
But yet, they could be energy independent also 24 hours a day if only they have enough energy storage facilities, and they're working on it. Because they say, okay, if we're in a deserted area, let's go all the way. And they're working on it policy-wise and regulatory-wise, and because they produce, think of how much sun days they have a year. So
right, it's crazy. I love the mountains north of Eilat. They're something else. Yeah. Talk about breathtaking.
True.
That's something else. So, I mean, how much it's interesting, like, because you're the Western Negev, it's almost like by the Mediterranean almost, right?
Yeah.
You have the Dead Sea, and you're the Red Sea.
Mm-hmm.
So you're talking about a desert that's no more than an hour drive in any direction is hitting water.
Uh-huh.
So it's kind of interesting when you think of it that way, right? How does that change the technology in DeserTech, having the lowest point on Earth and the saltiest sea on Earth, the Dead Sea, having the Red Sea and Eilat, right? There's a lot of coral there, or some coral. You know, how does the water that's around there play a part in DeserTech? Other than, I'm assuming, desalinization. But desalinization, you do need the ocean for.
So desalination happens mainly next to the Mediterranean, but it provides 90% of Israel's water consumption, agriculture and drinking water. That's in general for Israel.
What other water is there? I guess bathrooms, toilets, brown water. That's recycled also.
Yeah, that's recycled. But drinking water are being provided by the desalination from the Mediterranean. Right. Around the Dead Sea, it's very interesting because it's not the sea specifically, it's what's surrounding it. There's a very big R&D center next to the Dead Sea examining what are the benefits of being in a super arid area in crops, what kind of crops grew there, even though it's not next to the sea, obviously, but it's very close to it. It's not under the sea. So you have unique crops that grew in the region, and they are very regular to that super arid climate, but they have benefits for skincare and
Right.
anything else you could imagine around health and medicine solutions. That's one thing. And around Eilat and that area, you would be surprised maybe to hear that they grow a lot of seaweed and fish and some other crops that could be relevant to sea water, but on ground. I mean, they pull out water from the Red Sea.
Amazing. Huh?
They have some growing farms in a very high-end technology use, and they want to test and validate that you could grow sea crops or fish or anything else that could be relevant to that region, and not taking into consideration or creating an ecosystem that could provide all of that alternative protein out of microalgae and so on from the Red Sea.
Where do you think we're going to see DeserTech like in the future? Let's say like you fast forward 15 years, it's 2040. What do you think? Do you think the desert's going to expand or not? What do you think the population movement's going to be? What technologies do you think you'll be working on? What do you think your job, your responsibility?
It's like I need another hour to answer that. But I would say, first of all, around population and economic growth, that I think that we would have no choice, but I would say it in a good way. We would people choose more to live in an area that is work-life balanced. I think you said you live in Pardes Chana.
Uh-huh.
And in a way, I think it's quite similar, but there are some differences. But I think Pardes Chana is quite something we would look up to. I mean, you have your work life and you have your private life, and it's quite balanced. So I think the Negev would be quite the same in that. Technology-wise, I think we would be more using technologies coming from the universities and R&D centers and help them grow to business. And some of them would grow to be facilities and producers and become industries themselves. I see some options like this around microalgae. I think around some new building materials that could be relevant to desert areas that is much needed around the world. And when we talk about the economic growth in general, I think we would see expansion of what we produce and have much more bilateral collaboration or multilateral collaborations with the region around us, mainly because we share the same needs. It could be around the Mediterranean or the Middle East. There's no other choice in my eyes.
Amazing. If anyone wants to get in touch and learn more about the desert or DeserTech, we've got Sivan here from DeserTech. Thank you so much for being on IsraelTech.
Thank you for it.
My name's Yoel Israel. I'm your host. Please make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Sivan, thank you so much.
Thank you.